All right, welcome into Gridiron Icon this week, and this is a special week. I know I say that every week, don't I, Preston? But this one, this one gets me excited because this is somebody I watched very closely as a younger man, and I couldn't be more excited to spend some time with him. But before I do that, welcome in number 88,
Yes,
my
sir.
partner, Mr.
How are
Gennard.
you? Yes, yes. How's Portland these days?
It is fantastic. Weather is amazing here.
Outstanding.
Got to get to the West Coast, but on to our guest in the interest of time. Our person here this week, oh man, this is a good one. Prolific wide receiver in the NFL for 11 seasons during the late 70s and 1980s. He was selected to the Pro Bowl 4 times, and when he retired, folks, he was ranked 12th in NFL history in receiving yards and 13th in receptions. Might I add, that was during an era where all they did was run the ball. He was still putting up these numbers, is a member of the Chargers Hall of Fame as well as the College Football Hall of Fame and a whole bunch of other accolades. You will know him, especially if you're from New Orleans or San Diego or Florida, the great Wes Chandler.
Yeah, baby. I know how to fight the
I love it.
Yes, sir. Yes,
That's
sir.
impressive. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, Wes, so glad to have you, man. One of the great things, Stacey and I talk all the time. We have a lot of guests on, and lately it's been a few wide receivers. I kind of was feeling my oats there, but I started telling him about, I came out in a very special year because all the stars, and I happen to move in that window, but every one of the guys that I was competing against in college got drafted in 1978, and I ended up being a free agent because of the wonderful likes of guys like Wes Chandler and John Jefferson, Ozzie Newsome, James Law. I mean, we could go on and on, but that was a great class. That was a great class.
But don't be mistaken. You were a hell of a player.
Oh man,
Yes, he was.
Let's just keep it real. You were a hell of a player, and certainly I appreciate watching you and all the times that we would have our inner practices, Chargers, Rams. Certainly, I knew who you were.
Oh, baby. I love it. I love it. The great respect we all have for each other.
Absolutely, receiver, you right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I only wish it could have been 12 of us on one team together. That would have been a heck of a team.
I know that's right.
Need somebody to block, gentlemen. Somebody's got to block. Unbelievable. And they say you guys are divas. Look at you guys propping each other up. The wide receiver room. I love it. This is great. Well, I am super excited to spend a few minutes with you, Wes, as somebody who grew up loving those. Not so much on the Saints, got to be honest. As a Rams fan, I was a little upset with you. But the Chargers were kind of my AFC team, and my God, did you put up some numbers, my friend. Take us back a little bit, maybe just a touch on how you got into football in high school, and then we want to launch into what you did at Florida, which was incredibly special.
It's ironic because I grew up in Florida, little city, New Smyrna Beach. Yes. Small town, not a city, town. And I played Park Warner football, but I played in a league where I played for a team called the Packers.
Oh.
And we were over. We never won any football games. And and so it was ironic that a lot of these guys that I played against in Park Warner, I ended up going to junior high school with and on to New Smyrna Beach High School, where we won 28, 29 straight games before we were bumped off by Chris Collinsworth and crew in the state semis.
Wow.
Collinsworth.
No way.
There's another name.
As a matter of fact, it was Chris Collinsworth and Wilbur Marshall.
Oh,
They were teammates at Titusville Astronaut High School. I was a senior.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, that's a name right out of that 85 Bears defense. That's elite company. So you guys never won a game. We do our research here. You got to tell us why they called you Little Joe.
Little Joe.
Particularly a guy that scored 22 touchdowns his senior year. How does that happen?
Well, I was really when I went to the University of Florida when I was fortunate enough to be recruited and signed by them. I was 140 pounds, soaking wet.
What?
If that. And I was a
Wow.
running back. I was a high school running back and defensive back. Yeah.
Mm.
So it was little Joe. It was in the simple fact that I was very, very small, right? And they just started calling me Little Joe. And I guess it was because Joe Washington was at Oklahoma at the time.
Oh.
Joe Washington, and I had all those little moves like Joe Washington, and of course his statue was not the biggest in the world, but he could play the game. They started calling me Little Joe.
Wow. How'd you embrace the dual threat concept? Was it natural? It was something you embraced?
It was natural. I think that if people tell you that they play this sport, not a contact sport, but this collision sport,
Mm-hmm.
and if they don't play it sometimes out of fear, I don't know who they are, especially
Yeah.
offensively, right? Because the game was very, very violent at the time in which we played, Preston. And Stacey, I share this because there are times where you, honestly, if you want to get hit, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
You don't want to get hit. And so that's the fear factor because you don't know when it's going to happen. But when it does happen, sometimes it can be very, very violent,
Yes.
as we know, especially in those eras, the 70s and the 80s. So growing up, I didn't want to get hit, but I realized that, just having been a running back, I could absorb the blows. I knew how to roll with the punches, so to speak. And so I became accustomed to taking some pounding. And even though I converted to wide receiver, what I learned being a running back was most defensive backs don't want to actually tackle you.
That's right. True.
It's amazing how some of the smallest backs come through the hole. And the DBs are not necessarily trying to get, I don't know if it's the stiff arm or the fact that they want to take and go in and actually put the wood to somebody, right? And so I learned how to run in the traffic. I learned how to just take in the contact because I was so used to it being a running back. So I didn't have that fear factor in myself.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the transparency on that, particularly as a guy who went as far as a high school defensive back. And I can attest to that. When you got knees coming at your head and you try to go and fill the gaps, it's not very pleasant. It's not, no matter the size of the guy running. Yeah.
Well, Preston, you may recall this, and Stacey, this is ironic because when you play the position of wide receiver, we were taught to stalk block. Remember the old stalk block before you could start using your hands, and that's all you had. And guys would try and run through you, right? And so you were trying to put it up as best as you could. But the only thing that we had what was called the chop block or the crack back.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Right?
I've been a victim.
Let's sneak up on somebody.
Yeah, and all you had to do was fake it sometimes, and it was almost like cutting the deal sometimes. But even though you were in these heated games, that sometimes when you saw heels go up, you knew it was a great crackback or it was a great cut block, right?
Yeah.
And they don't do that it's not allowed today.
Yeah.
But back then it was just all we had as wide receivers. And of course, I think it goes understated that it was more of a running game back then. And we had to do a lot of blocking.
Yep.
Right?
Oh,
because you look at the guy you played with. I mean, come on, if you're not going to get in there and mix it up because of who he was as a running back, and you guys had a nice stable of running backs.
Sure
Also.
did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, a hell of a stable, right? And you had a great offensive line, right?
Yep.
And so when you're trying to do that, you know that you're trying to give your part to be counted, right? To know that I'm putting in my fair share. Unlike today, and that's one of the things I remember back in the day, and they probably don't do it today. And when I coached college ball, I didn't coach it as much other than the shield and using their hands, the palm of their hands, sort of like linemen do. But remember when you had to go one-on-one with the DB,
Oh yeah.
the blocking aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually tough. And even though it was DB wide receiver, right, that was still kind of tough at times because that DB was trying to give you that hammer.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Right?
Oh yeah.
all bets were off because if you could get under the chin or grab them pads and put those pads under his neck, you know what to do, right?
Oh yeah.
Through the start box. So, I look at the times and I look at the changes, but I'm appreciative that played the game. And all of those memories for me, as I was moving forward in the game, allowed me to become more of a student of the game as I watched the things to do and not to do, which is, when you look at the game today, I think what you find is how they even the blocking aspect. Right, a cutoff block, ball's going the other way. It may be going outside, but we were taught how to take angles.
Right,
because if we couldn't get to the safety, we had to turn back on the corner. Right, and I don't think they even do that today.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't think they even block, and I don't think the emphasis on how to block or get involved, even if you're the backside guy, of how to get involved from a total team perspective. And I won't underscore that it's not being taught, but I think that when we played this game, it was a complete position for the receiver. And then mixing it up with the DBs, it was the same thing.
Yeah. And I remember that tremendously because, when I got to the Rams in '78 that year as a free agent and had to go through the ropes to get to the point where you could truly be noticed. And, Lionel Taylor was our receivers coach.
Right.
And I tell you what, he was detailed. You had to block, but he was going to make sure you got the ball. And, back then, Wes, it might have been a little bit different for you, but for me, if I had 5 catches in a game, that was a huge day. That was huge back then. So you learned to really cherish the opportunities you had. And that's what made it for a lot of us.
Matter of fact, when you say that, I never caught more than 70 balls in a year.
Wow.
Okay.
Never. The only time I was on pace to do so was the strike season. I had 49 in the 8, right? But other than that, it was 69 as a high. Never caught any more than that. And so you're right. To cherish those moments and that's what I mean by when you go through the game, as the years go by, you realize you're never going to be an average of 8, 9. Like these guys, I mean, I was looking at the stats of CeeDee Lamb, 135 receptions, I think he had last year.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
That's 2 seasons for us.
Oh, heck
yeah.
2 seasons, right? And so, when we look back, flashback says, well, Preston, you're going to catch 5 balls if you're lucky on average, 4.5 if you're lucky, maybe 6. Okay, if you got the 72, if you got more than 70 balls in a season, that was a great season for you. But the thing that was impressive for us is look at your average per catch versus what you see today.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, listen, as an outsider, there's a couple things I want to throw out to you two. This raises a lot of questions about the Hall of Fame and what the criteria is to get in, because that's terrific that CeeDee Lamb and these other guys can catch 120 balls a year, but they are not facing the same rules, the number of games, nor Jack Tatum and George Atkinson hovering over the backside of them every time they catch a ball over the middle.
Or the Mel Blunts or the
Mel Blunt.
Right.
Ronnie Lott.
Or the Gary Greens or the Ronnie Lotts of the world. Right.
Yeah, it's not the same.
I don't throw any shade. I used to question the criteria of what it was. And I think in many instances, when you look at things of such like the Hall, for an example, the players know best what you meant and the defensive coordinators definitely knew, or the offensive coordinators definitely knew who they had to block or who they had to try and corral and shut down. And that is your contribution to the game, right? That is the real honest contribution. It's not always the numbers, because truth be told, if you're a cornerback and you're Deion Sanders and they ain't throwing the ball your way, what's the measure? I mean, what are you measuring? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, and if you're a wide receiver, and like the Rams, they had great receivers, great tight ends. They had the running game, certainly, because hell, they had an all-pro offensive line. They're going to run the ball with the Hall of Fame running back and a stable of backs. So at the end of the day, the emphasis is on the run. It's not on the pass. And even though we threw the ball, right, through the innovation of Air Coryell, the fact was, you got Winslow, you got Joyner, he's got to get his share. You got Chuck Muncie, you got Bobby Duckworth, everybody's going to get their share, right? And so at the end of the day, when you lead the league for 6 years, consecutive years in a row for passing, now you say to yourself, okay, if you're playing the San Diego Chargers, what do we have to do to contain it and shut it down?
Yep. Oh, those teams were dominant. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I said to myself, you know what? I'm not miserable about the fact that, the years have gone by. I'm just grateful to have played the game.
Yes.
And had an impact in the joy and moments that I shared with the teammates and the camaraderie and the friendships that has lasted over the years, like with Preston and Mike Haynes, people like that, Mike Merriweather, Ivory Sully, it to me, that means more to me, because guess what? They have a great appreciation for how I played the game, just like I do them, than those people who are sitting there trying to make the vote for what your contribution really is and who you were as a player greater than what it is.
Yeah.
So
media guys.
I don't even
guys.
Yeah, it's media. How can you?
It's insane.
My sister said this, and she said, "I'm gonna be done with it. I'm gonna say what I said. I don't want to talk about the Hall of Fame no more." She said, "Well, I want to say what I need to say, and I want you to hear me." So it's my older sister, right? So she said, "Let me say this to you. How can you play the game, come into the league in 1978, right? And you take all the years of those people who have played the game before you at the same position, and when you retire, your 12th and 13th, that's not worthy?"
Oh, yeah. It's at the risk of brown nosing. I saw you guys play, and I know those Chargers.
And so the latter, when it comes to numbers, and it doesn't matter what the sport is, there are things that we think will never be broken, and they will, because at some point in time, as the evolution of the game, it makes it easier to accomplish certain things. We never thought that Kareem's record would ever be broken in the NBA, and here comes LeBron.
Yeah,
right. But largely because they were not shooting as many threes back then as they're, and not that he was a 3-point shooter, but the fact that when you now can add three points to your numbers, you can get there much faster, right? And even today, Preston, think about it. The teams you played for, the team I played for, hell, if we were playing today.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice, because I can see it.
So yeah, and so the numbers, the numbers to me is not indicative to your contribution to your team and or to the game and what you meant to the game, or how much respect was given to you for how you played the game.
Agree. It goes without saying, and those Chargers offenses that you were on were unbelievable. I could spend 2 hours asking questions. But let me ask you guys this. I want to take this a little direction. Preston, I did not cue you up. How do you two feel? Wes, how do you feel? Listen, top 100 high school player all time in Florida, top 100 Florida Gator all time in college football. You're in the top 15 receivers all time when you retire in the NFL. How do you feel when you see Justin Jefferson get a contract like that?
I remember, because I was a player rep and an executive committee member.
Okay.
I remember how hard it was for me to talk about future money versus money now. Trying to convince players, part of it was my opinion. Part of it was reality that at some point if we're gracious enough, we're going to get older, and there'll be a time where it's going to be more valuable to us because the dollars that they're giving us now is going to have more value to us later on because we're going to need it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. For
Right.
more reasons than one, and not from a living perspective, but from a health perspective.
Health. Yes.
Okay. And so when we started going down this line of strikes for free agency and things of that nature, little did we know as much as we know now with regards to one, the fact that they had revenue share, right? Everything that they did was revenue share. They get an equal share of everything, right? They had a gentleman's agreement, they being the owners, where it doesn't matter. It didn't matter how many games you won or lost, you're going to get an equal share of the pie anyway. That's revenue share.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the fact that, hey, well, free agency, why? You're not gonna create any difference in their revenue, in their bottom line than they're already getting, in the simple fact that even if they don't go to the Super Bowl, they're gonna get the same share.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So all the threats of trying to get to that situation was only profounded for the fact that we were trying to tie that TV money that they were making into our collective bargaining. And that's by the grace of God said, okay, now you gotta come open, but for them to protect themselves, which I understand and respect, they went through the process of saying, okay, we got to have a salary cap because now it's going to get off, it's going to go off the rails, right? So they didn't have to spend so much, and players couldn't just go hog wild because you only have 4 or 5 players that make up the salary cap for most teams.
Right.
When you look at the numbers. So when I look at Justin Jefferson's deal, I'm grateful for the fact that we made that sacrifice, right? Because it was the most difficult thing to do, understanding now that guess what? They didn't, if we don't attack it the way we attacked it, right? One, we denounced ourselves as a union.
Yep.
Okay. We denounced ourselves. So we had better representation. And all the things. I went before the National Labor Relations Board to testify because they were, acts of collusion was happening.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Because, when it's a violation of the Antitrust Act, if you try and change jobs and someone's getting compensation for you changing because you want to move to another state.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I look back at all that and I say, fast forward to today. All those things that we did, and even though it was a heavy emphasis on just trying to make them give someone something worthy of their self-worth as a professional athlete. That's all it was, because they really didn't have to. When you think about when you're on revenue share and we getting something, you can't change my bottom line. Why do I really have to do this? And the only emphasis was, well, we're going to take money out of the revenue, for the players. Okay, well, we don't want you to do that, so we'll give that up, but we're going to put in place a salary cap, right? So what hurt me the most is when they got this and it was written into the CBA, they left us out as retired players.
Yeah.
What are you going to get?
Right.
What are you going to get? What are you going to do for us? We made that sacrifice for you when we were playing the game. We cut ourselves short twice at different times, right? Twice.
Man.
2 strikes.
Right.
To get them to this point. But a lot of these guys don't even understand or know the history
That.
of how these contracts have come about.
That right there, the younger players, and why I want to bring it out in forums like this. I don't think these young guys, especially when you're 20, 21, 23, you're not thinking like this.
Right.
So they don't even recognize the sacrifices you guys made. Would that be fair to say?
Go ahead, Preston.
No, I was going to say that most definitely, because, one of the greatest things, Wes, that I heard was as a retired player, I went to NAU. It was a Cardinals training camp, and some young man with Hall of Fame long braids in his hair, was an outstanding receiver for the Cardinals. He's now retired. I don't want to say his name.
I know
but
who he is.
he was pretty good. But one of the things that was outstanding for us is that I met these young players and I would say, "Hey man, how you doing? I'm Preston Denard. I played back. Man, I know who you are." "What?" "Oh yeah,
Good.
I watched you play." "What?" And
Good.
then they follow it. You really knew it was personal when they would say, "Oh yeah, old school." That's a term of endearment, and it lets you know they did follow the game. Now, the way they play it might not be the way we played back then, but at least there is some sense of respect. And probably not with all the young kids coming out today, but there is some representation of loyalty and respect for the guys that did pioneer the earlier days, something that we did when we were playing.
And there are, and that's why when I see, and it don't matter the sport, because a lot of times I'm watching basketball and I hear LeBron James, because he's a historian of the game. He has a great deal of appreciation for those that have gone before him. And he doesn't cut it short on saying that and making that awareness and putting it out there. With our game, the problem is that every 10 years now, because the CBA and the collective bargaining agreement, with the TV contract, they're tied together.
Right.
When it comes time to negotiate at some point, eventually you will all become who we are today.
Yeah.
What are you doing for the health benefits for the players, or even the increase in our pension? Because when we were coming about, it was supposedly overfunded.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, supposedly overfunded. But when you look at what you're getting and what you're receiving in today's economy, right, in our society, it's the bare minimum. It's the least of the four major sports, right? And so that negotiation is something that bothers me, and that's the only thing that I take away that I'm a little bit deterred about. And I get it, because they will never have to, based upon, well, some will, all won't, because again, there's a small percentage of those who are making the type of retirement money where you can go and do whatever you need to do when your playing days are over. There are some that still have to make ends meet, right?
Yeah.
Let's just keep it real. But in that process, you should be willing to sit down and take a segment or percentage of whatever to say, let's increase. Okay, because that's what our attempt was. We thought about the Jim Ottos of the world, or the pre-59ers, right?
Pre-59ers, yep.
Okay, so all of those things were something we had in our heart, and it was instilled upon us. And I don't think in their negotiations today that's a major emphasis.
Right.
Yeah.
The misrepresentation is not being, is not 100% there. I know a lot of players, like you said, Preston, have that appreciation for who we were. But at the end of the day, it's about the benefits, because it's health right now. Health, regardless of what it is, be it chronic pain, be it behavioral mental health, or brain health, or heart health. It's these issues that athletes like ourselves, Stacy, are faced with.
Oh yeah.
Right, on a daily basis, and you don't know when.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why it bothers me that when they get to the CBA opportunity, and it's so spaced out. Think about it, 10 years before you can get to the table to negotiate again.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane in the world's most violent sport.
Yeah. So we didn't think about how much somebody was going to be making. We just wanted the players to get their maximum value for what they brought to the game. Right. And that, to me, is what I'm saying. They should, when they get to the table, have at least that honest to want to make sure that the health benefits and the opportunity for players to get a bigger and better pension plan.
Yeah. It goes without question.
Well, this sport, because the number one thing that you read about today is CTE and all the characteristics and the epidemics that come from it.
Yep.
Yes.
and players are leaving, right?
Yep. Very young.
And because it is a problem, we can have an impact on that problem, because a lot of guys are not going to get or be awarded, even if they're borderline, they're not going to necessarily be awarded any monetary health. And so you wait till you're 65 to get Social Security or your Medicare or your Medicaid, right, to kick in. But what do you do before then? You got to wait till you're 55 before you even see your pension, unless you take it early, and then there's a penalty for it. So
Exactly.
at the end of the day, if you're one of us, all the years that you've been out of the game, and what's the average now? What is it? 2.3?
Yeah, right at 3, almost.
Okay, so I mean, we came out when you had to be a senior, so you had to come out when you were 22 years of age, right? So you got to wait double your life to see your pension.
Yeah. And not to mention, if you played 2 or 3 seasons, you're looking at 70 plus games at the minimum. 70 plus games, you're getting drilled. Yep. So you could, after 3 years, have major health problems that you can't tap any resources for. It is literally criminal.
And what are the benefits?
Yeah.
Think about it. See, and that's why I have a problem with the way they look at it. I don't have a problem with the money that they make. God bless them.
Yeah, good for them.
And kudos to us.
Yeah,
because we created that platform.
Yeah.
Right. But at least give some acknowledgement back by increasing the pension plan for those who've gone before you, who paved that way. We did that.
Yeah, and that I just, as a fan and a schmo here, not a guy like you two, but I think it goes without saying too that all of the advancement they have in today's game, outside of the money, including the equipment, the helmets, and everything, was made on the back of you guys. You can't watch a game now on NFL Network, and I'm horrified at the helmets. I'm horrified at the lack of padding. And I'm thinking, my God, these guys now roll out like, mercs in a military uniform, and they should, but they didn't know any of that because of you guys. So I want to mark your point there. Take a look at the guys that got you here. This has to be addressed. I'm really wound up about it. It's awful that isn't a bigger deal, especially with the obscene amount of money that league is making. I mean, they're in a lawsuit right now with NFL Ticket. I'm not going to go there. They got money.
Listen, you know they got money. Here's the other thing about it. The league is moving to more of a streaming league anyway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Where you gotta buy a subscription to watch a game.
Yeah.
Right.
Guilty.
And there was a time when we were playing the game, you don't know that your team could be sold.
Yeah. True.
Mine was.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. That's right.
And
Spanos.
several teams, right, were sold back then, but not today. When the last time you saw a team being sold? You're unlike the Washington Commanders now.
Right.
He got in trouble.
That was a force.
Yeah.
sale.
Yeah. He got in trouble.
But when was the last time you saw an owner say, "Okay, I'm going to give up this revenue ship"?
Yeah.
Oddly
And now-
enough, I think it was Stan Kroenke of the Rams. And that was like almost 20 years ago.
That's my point. And so now when you look at it, you look at the fact that Amazon has jumped in.
Yeah.
Peacock get games.
Yep.
Don't be surprised if these other platforms like Instagram get on where there's live streaming. I'm just telling you, it's going to be where everything is subscription. And they're going to be, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why I struggle if you are a current player and you understand this and the economic impact that broadcasting games and the way it's being presented, they're going to make money hand over fist. So why would you not be standing up for what you're essentially going to become, a retired player?
That's
with
true.
injuries. Yeah.
Yeah. Wes, you
Phenomenal.
you touched on a lot of really good challenges and concerns that we all have. And when you think about the push and the health of the players, it's really the players that are making the difference. And one of the things I want to make sure folks walk away from this podcast and understand is a great effort that you are putting into. And so you founded this program, and you've been talking from some of the knowledge and wisdom about it, but you founded the WCTE Inc. program, and your company really is an advocate for preserving, researching, educating players itself, but the entire community. Give us a little bit more about how you came to that. What motivated you to really drive that wagon?
Well, it came to me for the simple fact that when I retired from coaching at UC Berkeley, and that happened, either we were fired or Keenan Allen just decided he was going to go pro.
That's a good reason to leave.
And so I would always take my visits to Southern California. But every time I went, I was always hearing about a teammate, a colleague, an alumni who was not doing very well from a health perspective. Right. And, just to go and visit. And so I started making my rounds to go and visit and putting an emphasis on how people are doing.
Right.
Cool. And it just started hitting me that every time I went, I may have seen that person once, twice, and then it was over. The next time I saw teammates and people like yourself, we were at someone's eulogy. We were at a memorial. Yeah. We were at a memorial hearing a eulogy. And I walked into a bank myself to do a medallion signature. I was part of a company called Major League Football back in 2014. And we were going to launch to be a developmental football league between college and the NFL. And I walked into the bank to do medallion signature. And when it was over, I had to sign my name to these various things that I was giving away, right? The shares. I picked up the pen and I could not write my name.
Really?
Out of the blue, I just could not write my name. And I sat there, and it was really, really emotional for me. There was the bank president, a couple assistants, and the person doing the paperwork, and they were looking at me like, sign the paper. But I couldn't. And so it was challenging for me to try and pick up the pen again to start to try and do it. And essentially, I picked it up. I sat there as if I was asking questions, and are we sure that this is good to go? Is it all ready and it's good for my signature? And then, we're just waiting on you. And I was trying to delay because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't understand and I didn't know why.
Wow.
And when I picked up the pen again, I could not. And I went home more out of embarrassment, hurt, than I was anything. And, normally you can't write, you think your hand's gone to sleep or whatever. So I said, I'd take a nap and I'd wake up. Hours pass, I get up, I couldn't write. Days go by, couldn't do it. And finally, because we played this sport where there is no weakness.
Right.
It's tough. But I was struggling with the fact that I didn't know what it was. And so certainly I need to get to a doctor, but more importantly, I was not in control.
Right.
And I found myself being vulnerable to something I didn't know anything about. Right. And you know yourself being a DB, you're not supposed to be weak. And you know that yourself, Preston. You get a hit, you get a hard shot. If you can get off the field, you go and you hide behind your teammates, you take a knee. But you sure don't take one on the field.
Right.
So that mentality that was in me was being challenged by this newfound thing. And I went through a period of depression.
Yep.
Because of it. And then I started having some memory loss. And then So I wanted to do something about it, and so I came to see a doctor, and the doctor, long story short, the doctor, said, "Hey, you have tremors, right?"
Mm.
And I'm saying this on a podcast, and I shouldn't be saying this, but at the end of the day, I'm like, tremors. I know my hand was shaking; it just go over, and it doesn't matter. Even if you held my hand, it was still going to shake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was no steadiness, right? And so I could stop writing. I had to learn how to write with my right hand.
Mm.
Right. And the struggle was real.
Yes.
The fact that every day now I got to train myself, because first of all, when you try and do a letter, mindset has to hit you as to how you're going to make this letter.
Yes.
Right. So I was struggling with trying to just write Wesley. I'd start with the W. How do I start? And how do I finish? And how do I get into a rhythm of being able to make it so it's legible? Right. So, and then I looked into cannabis first, because I thought that was the avenue and the way, because it was clean. There were no real side effects, even when some of the incidents of kids who were suffering from epidemics didn't have any side effects, and they were taking cannabis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, let me do that because it's pure. There are no real side effects. It doesn't bring any harm. So I jumped into the cannabis world looking for a solution. In the meantime, the Doug Wilkinsons of the world and people like that were passing us by.
Mm-hmm.
And they were passing from this concussion. And I was one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, right? And so now that they're, we're going to these memorials, and every time you show up, it's, man, we got to get together more, other than places like this.
Yeah.
So I started one company to help start one company to get into the cannabis world, but I realized it was something that I didn't know anything about. I was uneducated in the world of CTE and TBI, traumatic brain injury. I knew very little, if anything, about chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I couldn't even say the word properly at the time.
Yeah,
That just how much I knew, right? And so today is so different, but it was a $75 billion epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, because players are dying, and at that time you could only actually find out if someone had CTE only by death.
Right.
Okay, the measurement of someone's brain. In the meantime, I had my own struggles, and I realized that cannabis wasn't the way, but I needed to start my own company, right, to address it. And so I said, I want to do something about CTE. I didn't want to tell anyone that I had a problem,
right,
or that I had issues or characteristics, because again, I was on the fly trying to learn, and I was entering into the pharmaceuticals market, getting into that space, which was new to me. And I realized that scientists and neurologists and people like that had to be a part of what I was going to get into, because I was determined at that time, not for myself, but to try and help the alumni, right? And this just doesn't cover the alumni of football in the NFL, but soccer, which women's soccer is number 2, gymnastics, because you don't have to you don't have to have been in anything other than a sport that gives you repetitive head trauma. So
Right, that's all it takes.
TBI. And the most common TBI, traumatic brain injury, is concussion.
Yeah.
So I went down the path, guys.
Wow.
How many? Oh, go ahead, Preston.
No.
Go ahead.
You got it, brother. Go ahead.
No,
Do it.
I think it's important to note, as somebody who admired watching you play, it takes away from all the fun questions you want to ask somebody like you, because this is so much more important. But did you suffer a lot of concussions during your career?
Oh, there's video out there, and even there's videotapes of where I was just, you're getting blindsided. Picture this, and I tell people this to this day. The thing about the game of football, and they start talking about, where you're anti. No, I'm not anti when it comes to the NFL and concussions. I just know this. you can change the rules. You don't have to kick it off, but if you're going to play football, at some point you got two things to do. You're going to kick it or you got to snap it.
Yep.
Otherwise, there's no game. And even if you don't want to kick it off no more and you just want to place it somewhere, you still got to snap it.
Right.
And as long as that ball is stationary, nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. But the moment that ball moves and the center gives it to the quarterback, it turns green. The ball turns green. And you either get one or two things from that. You get hit or you be hit.
Yep.
You either hit somebody or somebody hits you.
Right.
And this is how I say it to you guys, right? Change the rules, change the equipment. But the brain is just like a passenger in a car without a seat belt, because it sits in space, it's stationary, and it sits in liquid. It's not stationary, right? So if you're in a car and you don't have your seat belt and someone runs into you from the side, imagine the impact without that seat belt being on.
Yep.
Well, that's how your brain is, because it's just like not having a seat belt. It is a collision, and it's a violent collision. Yeah. So that impact is the very same as not wearing a seatbelt and get rear-ended or sideswiped by a car without having your seatbelt on.
Wow.
So unless you don't
200 times a game.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like multiple times.
Okay.
Oh.
So change the equipment, change the rules. You're not going to stop the repetitive head trauma, and it happens in all sports: MMA, UFC, boxing. It's called punch drunk syndrome.
Yep.
Punch drunk syndrome. Gymnastics, you're falling off the hobby horse. Okay. All of these things, it's repetitive head trauma, right? And it's even happening at the youth level today. Yeah. So to me, they had more concussions 2 years ago than they had the year before, by 200.
Wow.
Wow, Wes.
I didn't know that.
And that's a fact. And so what happens is, and this is why it bothers me, if the brain is getting rattled, you've changed the rule, you've changed the equipment, what have you done to treat the brain?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's undeniable.
Your brain becomes inflamed. When you have CTE, you have an inflamed brain.
Yeah.
So what are you doing for the inflammation of the brain? And if not, go treat it. If it goes untreated, then guess what?
Yeah.
You end up with an epidemic: ALS, CTE, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. And essentially, once you get it, you die.
Well, Wes, I just want to say, I want to commend you on the work. This is a great message and awareness statement this evening for those who are listening and will be hearing and watching this podcast. I just want to commend you on that great effort, because the story that you just shared, Stacy, it's the same story that I wear, the same clothing I wear today, the same outcomes, the same journey. Just last night, walking out in the garage, I got to literally backtrack just to find out why I went out there. It's a real issue.
It's a real issue, and when you don't think it's real, you didn't sign up for it.
Nope.
But it comes with the territory. And I've told so many significant others that it's not his fault.
Yeah.
Or it's not their fault at this time.
Right.
Yeah.
But just know this. At some point, you got to say to yourself, I'm not a warrior.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
You're a man.
I'm not you're a human being. And you have to succumb to seeking the resource to give you assistance for a better quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's, we live in a society, even on this show, I mean, just being transparent and candid, where you guys are heroes to a lot of people, right? The fans, you were my heroes. It's not hard. And this stuff isn't talked about enough.
Right.
And it needs to be talked about, and things need to be done about this. It's, you look at all your stats and all your Hall of Fame and all your trophies and all your accolades. It's really important and amazing. Like, I want to echo what Preston said, that you're talking about this and you've created WCTE, and we will certainly share that on our website and all the other good stuff so that people can be aware of this.
I certainly appreciate it, and I spend my time trying to put on events, especially health awareness dinners, informal, where players can come, athletes can come, military personnel, because they suffer from PTSD, which is a TBI as well, right? And it's just not football. Football just gets the biggest attention because players are dying, at an alarming rate. But like I said, soccer, basketball, hockey, all those sports are repetitive head trauma sports, right? Yeah. And just enough of those repetitive head traumas will put you in the field of epidemics in our society. And the reason why I do the dinners is because think about the number of people who cheered us on, whether you were in college or whether you were in pro football. You don't know 90% of those people that cheered you on, that believe in you, win, lose, or draw, they were pulling and pushing for you, right? But these epidemics in our society, it's societal. It's just not sports related. And there are people in our society, because I looked at this, that, I lost some of my grandparents, my great grandparents, to these epidemics. And it's no different than I am today, fighting the same thing that some of them died from. And so I want to be able to walk this walk with the John Doe who cheered Preston Denard on, or Stacy on, in the stadium over the years that you played in, who may be suffering from the very same thing. Because this is something, these epidemics are something that anyone can be suffering from. If you were there to cheer us on over the years in our communities, how come I can't do something in the community of health awareness to say I'll walk this walk with you as well? Thank you for cheering me on. Let me do something for you. Because the hardest thing in the world to do is to admit you got an issue and to seek the help necessary.
That is so important. And I tell you, I wish we had more time to even dive more into it, but that may come another day. Certainly appreciate you being with us. Just so much important information. And folks, I really want you to really embrace the words that were just shared here, because even though it's a glamorous look on TV, today is the real game that we both play, and we're living it right now. Before we let you get out of here, my friend, the 2-minute drill is upon us. And so, Stacy, why don't you set him up for the 2-minute drill? If you want me to do it, I'll do it, but you're more welcome to take it, my friend.
Okay. I mean, it's an honor. I'm happy to jump in. We'll keep it real quick, but this is, I tell you, Wes, it's hard to capitalize or do anything better than the last 15 minutes. So take that with the spirit it's meant in. That was such an important message. Can't wait to get this episode up.
Thank you, but I'm worried about the setup.
No setup. Good, no setup. No setup. This is where we lighten it up and have a little bit of fun. So, okay, Wes, here we go. 2-minute drill. Turf or grass?
Grass.
Yeah, he played on both. He played on both. It just hit me. Florida, New Orleans. Yeah, okay. College or NFL?
NFL.
Okay. You were a very decorated college guy. I thought that could go either way. Okay. How about your favorite movie?
Favorite movie?
This reveals a lot.
Of all the movies, I Scarface.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Okay, that's a first. I love it. Okay, Wes, your most underrated teammate at any level you ever played with? That's tough. I noticed how tough this is on you guys, all of you.
Well,
which is cool.
There's a reason.
Yeah. Love it.
Ed White.
Ed White. Oh, he was a good. Got his football card.
That would. Yep. That's a good one.
Man, this is bringing back memories. I love it. Your greatest football achievement to date?
I'm gonna throw you for a loop. Being a 2-time academic All-American was my greatest achievement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Love it.
That's
Love
straight
it.
fire right there. That is straight
Oh,
fire
baby.
from a Hall of Famer, folks.
Y'all heard that, right?
Go to school,
Athletics
kids.
and academics.
That's really cool, man. That is really
Yeah.
cool. And then finally, to wrap things up, who plays Wes Chandler in a movie of your life?
My grandson.
Oh, okay.
Whoa, give us his
Okay.
name. Give us his name if you don't mind.
Cartel.
Cartel.
All right. Yeah,
Okay.
I love it. Love it. Love it.
All right. Does he just carry your persona? Does he look like you, or is he just
Spitting image, huh?
Hidden image, Papa West. That's all
Oh, that's I love it. I love
he
it.
did. Yeah. I might tell my son, get out the way.
Love it.
I love it, man. We've never had that, Wes. We've never
No,
had somebody
never
say
have.
that. That's awesome.
My grandson, not my son, my grandson. It's heartwarming for me because, I just, oh my Lord, that would be the guy.
I love that.
Well,
That might be our coolest answer ever. Okay, go ahead, Preston.
Decorated or not, my friend, one thing I will always walk away with is that I was a part of a very special group of wide receivers that came out one year together. And I'm so glad to be associated with that, my friend. You look good. Stay strong. If there's anything that we can do to help support you, let us know. We'd love to be a voice and an advocate.
It's
100%.
been real for me, and certainly I've enjoyed myself, and I'm sorry to have gone off on so many tangents regarding.
No, we love it.
No,
No.
absolutely. We
I
wish
love
we had another couple hours with you.
And this will be up and available.
Mhm.
It sure
yeah.
certainly will. That's
Yeah.
right. We'll send it to you
Okay.
via email post show.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys, for having me. And again, Preston, Stacy, I love you guys. I love what you do. The forum is so unbelievable, and I'm glad you reached out to me to ask me to be a part of this.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to go
Such-
chase down Bobby Butler next.
Such an
There you go.
I'm going to get him next.
such an honor
Please do.
for me. Bobby Butler. I love it.
I will. I'll get with you. I'll get to it. Go ahead, Stace.
I'm
Take it
humbled.
away.
I'm humbled, guys. I really am. I'm grateful.
Well, I am, as a huge fan, I'm equally as grateful to have met you. And thanks to my friend Preston. And thank you for being here. For all of our listeners, if you want to see how ridiculously good these two look, like I often think, if I walk into a restaurant with like you two, who do they honestly think is going to be the oldest guy? It's going to be me. It's really bad, man. It's really bad. But for all our listeners at Gridiron Icon, follow us in all the usual spots. A huge thanks to the Hall of Famer in so many ways, Wes Chandler, and to my partner in crime, Mr. Preston Denard. Thanks for being here, and we will see you all next week.